Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. Stick around and we'll leave you with a movie to watch over the weekend with your family or that special someone. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Wednesdays, the host with the most recognition. Probably not, in comparison to our topic for today's episode of What to Watch Wednesdays. I'll be real here. Let me put it to you like this. Having your own radio show on a college radio station does not guarantee that you will have the same brand recognition as one of the most iconic characters in all of media of all time. Who am I talking about? Why, I'm talking about Batman. Who all hasn't heard of Batman? Okay, those of you who just said you've never heard of Batman, I know you're lying. You've heard of Batman. Everybody knows who Batman is. And we are going to be talking about Batman movies tonight. What else on What to Watch Wednesdays? But we are going to be talking about a very specific time of Batman movies. We are going to be looking at the Batman movies from the 90s. 2 movies directed by Tim Burton and 2 movies directed by Joel Schumacher. Although I should mention that because we talk about 3 movies on What to Watch Wednesdays, we will only be covering the 2 Burton films and then 1 of the Joel Schumacher movies. Which leads nicely into what exactly our watch list is actually made up of. For tonight's watch list, we are going to be taking a look at Batman from 1989, followed by Batman Returns from 1992, and closing out the night with Batman Forever from 1995. The reason we aren't talking about the other Joel Schumacher Batman from the 90s is because of 2 things. First of all, we tend to talk about 3 movies here on What to Watch Wednesdays, and I didn't feel like talking about 4. And 2, I didn't feel like talking about the 4th movie in this series, which is Batman and Robin. If you are unfamiliar with Batman and Robin, let me tell you right now, there's a very good reason I'm not talking about it here on What to Watch Wednesdays. We'd be here for the next 2 hours, and we only have an hour. So, with that being said, when we come back from the break, we'll jump into Batman 1989. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. For our first movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Batman from 1989, available to watch now on Max. For the basic plot summary of Batman from 1989 specifically, as there are multiple movies called Batman, including this one, the one from the 60s, and then The Batman, which I still count because it's just Batman with the in front of it. But for the plot of Batman 1989, we follow Batman/Bruce Wayne as he must keep the Joker from destroying Gotham City. And that's it. That's really it. If I'm being honest with you, my format for doing reviews here on What to Watch Wednesdays doesn't exactly work for just kind of high concept, basic plot summary superhero movies. Or at least I didn't think it would at first. We can still have fun with it. We're still going to actually review the movie. But in terms of plot, what do I say? X hero goes up against Y villain. Done with the plot summary. So I suppose we should jump into the movie itself. We should jump into the review. I don't know where to start with the review. Where do I start with this? Batman 1989 is iconic. It's well known. It's well recognized. It's often pointed to, or at least I've heard that it has been pointed to, as kind of the, I suppose, inception or genesis for basically the commercial success of superhero movies ever since it came out, right? The MCU in its current form may not exist today had it not been for the success of Batman 1989, or at least that's what I've heard of before. With such an interesting kind of backstory behind it, it makes it a bit difficult to really know, where do I want to dive in first? What's the first thing I want to actually highlight with this movie that it achieved? Thankfully, I have at least some basic idea of where I would personally want to start. So we'll go with that. And I'll start off by saying that Michael Keaton is a very decent kind of marriage of both worlds in terms of an actor who's portraying Batman. Sounds like an interesting place to start. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that Michael Keaton, for as talented as he is not perfect, because nobody's perfect. But Michael Keaton, I think, when it comes into the discussion of who's the best Spider-Man, who's the best whatever other character they tend to do this with, who's the best Batman, right? I think Michael Keaton should be kind of in the middle. He's not the 100% best at being either Bruce Wayne or Batman. But his Bruce Wayne is good, and his Batman is good. So it's not exactly like he's bad. It's just that he is good at it, but not great at it. I think that's a great place to start because it kind of extends to my entire opinion surrounding Batman 1989. How did I just say that? Batman 1989. It sounded like I was going nang, 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 like I was gnashing my teeth trying to say 1989. Batman 1989 is not an amazing movie overall, but I would say it's good. I'd say it's worth a recommendation. It's not the best Batman movie that you could see out there. There are other Batman movies, many other Batman movies, that I would definitely say are better than this. Specifically things like The Dark Knight or even The Batman from a couple years ago, I would say are better than Batman 1989. But as a package deal, I think you could do a whole lot worse for an enjoyable movie about a masked, caped superhero. If I'm being completely honest with you, you could do so much worse than Michael Keaton's Batman from 1989. Tim Burton's as well. I also think that when it comes to the discussion of the Joker as a supervillain, right? We all know the Joker. If you know Batman, you know Joker. How do you not know who Joker is? You know who Joker is. And many people would know that Jack Nicholson plays the Joker in Batman 1989. I would say, overall, that Jack Nicholson is not the best Joker. But he is a good Joker. Do you see the theme that we're going with here? He is not the best Joker. But later down the line, he ended up inspiring, from what I could hear, he is the major inspiration for how Mark Hamill portrayed the Joker later when he did the voice acting stints. When he was voice acting as the Joker. When Mark Hamill plays the Joker in any animated or video game series with Batman, I think that Mark Hamill takes a page out of Jack Nicholson's book. Specifically the way Joker laughs. And for that, I need to give Jack Nicholson credit. He deserves that form of credit for coming up with such a crazy laugh that then inspired, in my opinion, the best portrayal of Joker in Mark Hamill. So for that reason, it still earns its props. Again, we're getting to the theme here of the original Batman from 1989 is not a bad movie, even remotely. It's just not the best. It's kind of like comparing this really good apple that you had to an apple that isn't rotten at all. It just doesn't have the same flavor. Maybe it's just not as big as the other apple you had, and maybe you just can't make apple juice out of it or something along those lines. I don't know how apples work, and it's a bad analogy because it's not apples to oranges. It's comparing two things that are similar, and one of them just so happens to go above and beyond, whereas the other one is perfectly acceptable in every way, shape, or form. That's the way I'm going to describe Batman 1989. That's the way I want to hammer it in. Except for two specific things that make this movie really good. Again, I've been hammering it in that it's still good, but not the best. However, there are two things about Batman 1989 that I think are worth mentioning that are contenders for the best in their game. Specifically Batman movies, of course. Those two things are Gotham City set design. The way that Gotham City looks in Batman. And by extension, its sequel, Batman Returns, which we'll jump into after the break. I think that the set design of Gotham City for Batman 1989 works on 10 different levels at once. It's gothic, it's eerie, it's creepy, both during the day and nighttime. You get that good dual usage of it. It just feels both so Tim Burton and so very Batman. Alongside it comes the musical score by Danny Elfman. Man, did I not realize how elaborate and almost overly cinematic, overdone, overblown, massive this score is. How massive it feels when you listen to it. How incredibly effective it is at driving home this sense of atmosphere and feeling behind every single moment of this movie. Maybe it's partially nostalgia talking, but I don't really care. Because, in my opinion, Danny Elfman's original theme for Batman works amazingly. And his musical themes in the sequel are just as good. But before we get to that, we're going to have to take a quick break. So stick around for after the break, where we jump into Batman Returns. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Batman Returns from 1992, available to watch now on Max. For the basic plot summary of Batman Returns, we follow Batman as he returns. See, that's why it's called that. He returns to Gotham, returns to the silver screen to fight two foes this time around. First off is the mysterious Penguin, followed by the equally as mysterious and a bit more not for kids character known as Catwoman. And then there's a third guy there known as Christopher Walken, or as he's called in the movie, Max Schreck, who's there. I'll admit he is kind of a villain, but I mean, Penguin and Catwoman are more iconic than Max Schreck, played by Christopher Walken. I love Christopher Walken as much as the next guy, but he's not exactly all that important. He's about as important as the boss of Jack Napier, or I believe that was his name, Jack Napier, who later becomes the Joker in Batman 1989. The reason I didn't mention him is because I forgot, and he wasn't that important. Same goes for Max Schreck, even though I've mentioned his name 4 times. We're going to move on, and we're going to talk about Batman Returns as a whole, which the first thing I want to really start off with is I want to tell you all that when I watched these movies for the first time a couple years ago, I watched them kind of back to back. I believe Batman 1989, one day, next day was Batman Returns. And I remember thinking and reading through reviews, kind of being influenced by that in my thinking, that Batman Returns was a better movie than Batman 1989. At the time, I kind of felt that, and then I rewatched them for this review. I can tell you now with actual confidence that I do still think Batman Returns is a better movie. But now I have confidence as to why that is. I wasn't always exactly sure why I thought that, but having rewatched it, I can tell you now, I think it's better. Personally, I think the original Batman from 1989, it had character with its rough edges, right? There were some editing choices here and there that were a bit sloppy because of just very clearly some restrictions either imposed by the studio or just overall kind of complications with trying it for the first time. And there was a lot of kind of weird moments that felt like they shouldn't have been in there. Batman Returns does not have any moments like that. It doesn't have weird moments that feel unmotivated or undeserving. It doesn't have really any editing mistakes at all. And I can say with confidence that Danny Elfman's score is just as good, if not a little bit better, in Batman Returns. There's just more overall consistent quality throughout the entire thing. And it feels like it's its own thing, but still being an improvement and a sequel to the original. That's what it is overall. If I had to pick out some more specific examples, one of the best ones I can give you right now is that the Penguin being played by Danny DeVito is amazing. I love Danny DeVito as the Penguin. He is probably the best portrayal of Penguin ever. Want to know why? Because Danny DeVito does a really good job of being the character. He is not adapting the character to himself. as much as I like Jack Nicholson's performance as the Joker, and as important as it was, I will concede and say that personally, I feel like Jack Nicholson did a better job at making the Joker just himself with Joker makeup on, if that makes sense. It wasn't exactly Joker the character, it was Jack Nicholson playing the Joker, right? Do you see the way that changing that order really makes a difference? Whereas with Batman Returns, it's definitely the Penguin played by Danny DeVito. It's what makes it more impactful. What makes it work better is how the actor is able to be the character and not let themselves or their ego, or maybe just their style in particular, if I'm talking about Nicholson, if I'm being completely honest, take over the character and become kind of the thing that overshadows it. So I give Batman Returns praise for that. And that goes exactly the same for Michelle Pfeiffer, who plays Selina Kyle, or Catwoman, in Batman Returns. She does kind of the best of both worlds from both Danny DeVito and Jack Nicholson, in that she is kind of basically overshadowing what Selina Kyle could have been, but making it her own in a way that actually works as a character. It's not perfect at first. I'll admit that at first, she makes a very good impression, and then she kind of stagnates and loses a bit of steam. She kind of has this problem where she's talking like she thinks it'll be funny if she just keeps talking, right? It's kind of like what I do here on the show, where I just keep talking and hoping it'll eventually be funny, right? At first, it's kind of like that. But when she becomes Catwoman, when she decides to be Catwoman and makes that transformation, all bets are off and it works perfectly fine. I will admit that most of those scenes where she is turning into Catwoman and being Catwoman make this movie not for children at all. No. But I will also fully admit, as an adult and as a person who is watching this, who is probably too old to watch it anyways, if it's not for kids, it'd be fine to show to teenagers, sure. But as a college student, maybe you're a bit old for it. I was watching Michelle Pfeiffer on screen, and I was watching her switch between the very much not for kids Catwoman and the equally as crazy but still relatively safe Selina Kyle. And let me tell you, if Keaton was just good but not perfect as Bruce Wayne, when he is merged with Michelle Pfeiffer's own interpretation of Selina Kyle, he suddenly becomes the best Bruce Wayne ever because he's with Michelle Pfeiffer, okay? That's how good she is at it. That's how good their chemistry is. That's how well their writing works. I can fully admit as a human being that I felt something watching these two on screen. There was magic in between the two of them. It's electrifying. It's amazing. That alone is what makes Batman Returns better than Batman 1989. The fact that it has Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne, Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton, perfect match. Perfect match. Do you just imagine me like doing something with my hands where I'm trying to mimic a puzzle piece, just never clicking it together? Because this is a bad analogy, because this is voice only. No visuals. You get what I'm saying. It's good because of that, but good for so many other reasons. I would recommend Batman from 1989 and heavily recommend going right into Batman Returns after watching the original. What I can't do in good conscience is recommend you watch the movie that came after Batman Returns, which we will talk about after the break. And that movie is known as Batman Forever. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our third and final movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Batman Forever from 1995, available to watch now on Max. For the basic plot summary of Batman Forever, we follow Batman as he must face two villains this time, even though he faced two villains in the last movie. Don't worry about it. He must face the vicious Riddler and the Crazy Two-Face, played by Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones, respectively. As he fights Riddler and Two-Face, Batman is fighting for Gotham City to remain a nightmare-infested, really bright and fever dream-inspiring maze of horrible color choices. I can't do this anymore. I have to be honest. I don't like Batman Forever. It's bias? No, it's an understanding that I know where my limits are. I know when I don't like a movie. I know when I don't like what a movie is trying to do. And I know when I'm bored. And Batman Forever, wow. I almost said that like it was Batman Forever. Batman Forever is a movie I do not like. And it is a movie that bores me. You could say that one is related to the other. I could probably say that because it bores me, I do not like it as a movie. I also think it's just badly executed. I think it's too bright. It's too over the top. It's too unrealistic. What do I mean by unrealistic? I'm not one of those annoying people who complains about realism in movies. What I'm talking about is the contrast between Batman Forever and something like Batman Returns or Batman 1989, where it feels, it's kind of the contrast between being slightly cartoony and the contrast between being like Looney Tunes level of cartoony. Batman Forever falls into the category of being so over-the-top cartoony that I think it would have benefited from just being an animated movie. And normally that's a compliment, the idea of making a cartoony movie that is live action with things like The Mask and other examples. In Batman Forever's case, all I was sitting there thinking was, okay, if it's this cartoony, why wasn't it an animated movie? I think it would work. It may work marginally better as an animated movie. I can't guarantee it would work 10 times better as an animated movie. But I think it would be better than this kind of hodgepodge of nonsense. Clearly, the camera operators and the editors of this movie did not really know how to handle themselves with live action stuff. And the director or whoever was doing the lighting was just kind of like, let's just throw in like 5 billion colors. So I think it just would have been better for that. When I talk about lighting, I mean like every street corner of Gotham City in Batman Forever has a different color to it. Almost every inch of the city is covered with a completely different colored light that it kind of just meshes into this hodgepodge of nonsense being thrown at your eyes. It almost gave me a headache at one point. And I'm just like, this is desensitizing me to the ability to look at having a bunch of colors in your movie as a fun thing. I'm a person who loves seeing a bunch of colors in a movie, but when you throw them all on the screen in kind of a visual vomit sort of way, it tends to lose its effect really quickly. Batman Forever loses its effect very quickly. It doesn't really set out to be a good movie with, I suppose, substance underneath the style is the way I'm going to describe it. With Batman and Batman Returns, they aren't masterpieces. They aren't some high-level thing of human experience. But I will give them this. Batman had a really good twist that worked with its storyline and benefited both the hero and the villain of the story in terms of context and history. Batman Returns had the wonderful collaboration between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle in making them a wonderful pairing, both in the actors and just the way they were written. Batman Forever feels like it wants to do that, but it doesn't have good enough writing to do it. It just doesn't. It feels like it's too much and nobody ever told it to stop. It just keeps going and going and not stopping. And let me explain something really quickly. Let me tell you right now that this will not remove my credibility. I didn't watch this movie all the way through before doing my review tonight. What I mean by that is I haven't watched this movie all the way through recently. What I did do is I sat down and I watched the first half. And by the time I got through the first half, I was just like, I think I'm done. I'm remembering why I don't like this movie anymore. I'm remembering now why I don't like this movie. I did watch it many years ago when I watched Batman and then Batman Returns. I watched this one after those two. And I've always held the impression that after watching Batman Forever, I had the opinion that it was one of the most violently boring movies I'd ever seen in my life. Having sat back down and watched at least the first half again, I can confirm that I know why I felt that way. Because I think it is one of the most violently boring movies I've ever seen in my life. With all of the color on screen and all of the nonsense happening, you'd think it'd be more entertaining. And I was getting a kick out of it during the first half, but it also just kind of devolved into visual noise. It all lost its effect after a while. I could feel myself physically trying to just purge myself of the memory of the first hour of the movie. That's not a good sign. That is a really bad sign when you're watching a movie, that you feel yourself, your brain decaying and trying to forget it. It felt like it went on forever. See, I used the title of the movie. This feels so disjointed as a review, but I figured I'd give it justice by being disjointed when the movie itself feels so incredibly disjointed. The last things I want to say, I will admit, when I first watched this movie, I for some reason had a vendetta against Val Kilmer. I don't know why. I think he's a decent actor and he's an okay Batman. He's not as good as Michael Keaton, but he's all right. I don't think Tommy Lee Jones should have been Two-Face. I think Jim Carrey was an okay choice for the Riddler. I didn't even remember that Nicole Kidman was in here as the therapist Chase Meridian. What kind of name is that? She's awful. She's written so badly. And if I'm being completely honest with you, the person they got to play Robin in Batman Forever, Chris O'Donnell, cannot act to save his life. But that becomes a lot more apparent when we jump into Batman and Robin. And we're not going to do that tonight. But I'll tell you this. We will be jumping into Batman and Robin on What to Watch weekends. This upcoming Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. here on 88.1 The Burg. Before What to Watch weekends on Sunday, however, I will also be back tomorrow night from 8 to 10 p.m. because this week marks the second collaboration between What to Watch, myself, What to Watch Wednesdays, and What to Watch Weekends, and the show Femme Fatality, where I shall be appearing as a guest on their show tomorrow night, where we will probably talk about Batman and then get completely off track talking about a bunch of other random topics. So tune into that. It'll be a lot of fun, as well as please do tune in to What to Watch Weekends this upcoming Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. here on 88.1 The Burg, where they will be joining as guests on my show, where we will be talking about Batman things. Specifically, we will be jumping into a review of Batman and Robin. I can't wait to talk about that one. Thank you all for listening in to What to Watch Wednesdays tonight. Please make sure to follow What to Watch Wednesdays on Instagram and YouTube at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces. I will be back here on Wednesday night next week from 8 to 9 p.m., as I always am, here on 88.1 The Burg, where I will tell you all what to watch. So, good night, and I don't know, Batman out. Where'd he go?